Joe, how would one develop an idea first for the web series? I mean, does someone look at what to make versus a type of web series that a void that hasn't been filled already? Are you looking to fill a certain demographic in the industry? What's popular right now? Or they go off what inspires them?
I would go more with the latter, with inspiring, because I'm not a fan of making calling cards. I'm not a fan of writing from demographics. I don't think that you can think up a story and go, well, that's what a 24-year-old woman who wants to buy a Volvo would watch, because that's shitty storytelling, I think. Write what you know is going to be fun to write and work your ass off on, and that is going to take everything out of you, because it's got to be fun. It's got to be worth it. And I think that if you're like, I have a vampire show. There are a lot of vampire shows. Part of the inspiration was to find another way into that genre, and that was part of the thinking. But I wrote a show that has profanity in it. I wrote a show that is, you know, my vampire rules are no one sparkles, there's no romance. It's I think a different approach to it. But what I love bad guys, I love crime, that whole, I was a bartender in Boston and had mafia regulars, so I kind of felt like I knew a little bit about that world, and it just seemed like the perfect mix of things. So I think if you're thinking about making a show, imagine that there is no television industry, there is no film industry, the entertainment industry doesn't exist. Now, what story do you want to tell? Because the only thing the entertainment industry is going to bring you is people telling you no, people telling you what to do, people telling you what not to do, lots and lots and lots and lots of rules. And part of those rules are, who's your demographic? Who's going to watch this? If you are going around town trying to get permission, trying to get somebody to say yes, then go do that. If you see this as the first time in the history of storytelling that you can create something at a quality that has never been achievable for this price, that you can show to an audience around the world on the internet as not the greatest thing in the world, because so much of this has been about yeses and nos. So much of this has been about, please let me tell the story. Sure, we're going to fire you now and bring in our writer and our director and completely change everything you do. Or, well, we'd like this, this, and this because it'll be good for the sponsor. Or, we don't want this because we can't get sponsorship. My thinking is find some way to do it with as little bullshit as you possibly can, because the more bullshit you have to deal with, the more it slows you down, the more you're waiting for somebody else to give you permission. To me, it's like, this is the perfect opportunity to be able to tell a story. So I think if you can come up with a story that you can get the cash, find some way around it, incorporate the budget into the idea of the story, make it a consideration. Like when I write Vampire Mob, I'm thinking about, well, where is this location while I'm writing it? And if I know that location, then I know where we're going to shoot it while I'm writing it. So that saves so much time in pre-production. It lowers my budget. We do a lot of guerrilla shoots. We do a lot of no permit shoots. We have lookouts sometimes when we're shooting. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't have a problem with it. And we've been very, very lucky and have shot like 125 pages just on this show without permits and never had a problem. But so I think it's a combination of thinking of what story you really want to tell, what can you afford to tell or figure out a cheap way to tell, and starting from there, because once you start thinking like that, then you need less people, then you need less, you don't need a giant company to go, here's money. You don't need to do a Kickstarter $50,000 campaign. And I think it trains your head because I write it, I direct it, I produce it, I edit it, I fundraise for it, I promote it, I cast it. So if I'm doing all those things and I know that I'm doing it without having to go, is this person okay for you? I'm going to cast this person. Is that person okay? To a company, to a producer, to someone who's overseeing it. Focus on the freedom, focus on the story you want to tell, and the best way that you can tell it would be my advice, and not everybody agrees with that. It's probably antithetical to marketing, to finding a sponsor, but if your story's really good and your audience knows, like the Vampire Mob audience knows how we make this show. They've seen us shoot the show. I talk on Twitter about making the show. I blog about it. So they know that we are just a few people with cameras shooting in somebody's kitchen or stealing shots out in the street or whatever we're doing. And that becomes the personality of the show. It becomes, for lack of a better term, the brand of the show. That we're like these indie people that are just like, fuck it, let's just go do this. And go do it.
So this idea that you have that you should not gear a web series towards some void that's currently not been filled out there, is that embraced by other filmmakers or web series directors, and have you met any opposition?
Yes. I've been asked if my show was a hobby because I didn't talk about demographics and sponsorship. I talked about story and audience and working with Emmy winners and Tony winners, and you know, I think part of the problem with the web series community is that a lot of people want to be pioneers and veterans, and this is not old enough to have veterans. This has not been. I wrote for a web series in 2000 for Mondo Media up in San Francisco, paid gig. Their model was syndication to newspapers. So a newspaper like the Washington Post would buy syndication rights to their animated show to have on their website as content, and that would be the place that it would show up. And that was the revenue stream, so they could afford to fly me from LA to San Francisco, pitch, come back and write. Then in 2007, I directed one show and produced another show for Super Deluxe, which was superdeluxe.com, which was Turner Entertainment. So they had lots and lots of money, and it was great. And they paid us all. It was great. I am not a veteran because this hasn't been around long enough for there to be veterans. We're not pioneering an industry. We're just storytellers that are posting stuff online. That's been going on since the mid-90s. What's changed is behavior, is the acceptance that I'm going to watch a television show on my phone for 45 minutes while I'm at the airport. That wasn't a value that was held by humanity. That wasn't, people didn't think, oh, I'll just go watch it on Hulu. Oh, Netflix has now an original series. You can only watch it on Netflix. They're going to make more. Like, that has been where this is all headed. So this idea of a drama should be a 4-minute episode, a comedy should be no longer than a 3-minute episode, and it needs to have something that Gum could sponsor. Building stories up from the demographics, to me, is just like, here's the keys to the kingdom. Now, do you want to use any of them, or do you want to act and emulate an industry that has been fucking storytellers for going on a century now, because the people with the money get to make the decisions and the people who tell the stories don't. Here you are, you have everything, all you need is money and to figure out some fucking way to do it. That's all you need to do. Why are you thinking about, well, who could sponsor this? Because you need money. Well, how could we make it cheaper so we don't need a sponsor, so I can tell the story I want, so I can not have to meet a 3-minute thing? Because the people who say, don't make it longer than 3 minutes, don't make it longer than 5 minutes, you know, they're looking at the analytics on YouTube going, well, when do we lose the audience? When do they fall off? Who are you? Are you trying to create a viral video? Because now you're wasting your time. No one can create a viral video. If you look at the history of viral videos, something happens. It's not that they're just made and they're put online and they go viral. Something happens, someone refers to it, something mentions it. There's a number of blogs, even things that are in the news now that happened a month ago. Now they're a big viral thing. You can't make it happen. So why are you pretending you can? why are you pretending to be a producer that walks around with my, well, here's all my demographics and here's my business plan, and really, is that what you're dreaming about when you were a kid? Is that what you wanted to do when you wanted to, oh, you know what, I'd love to fucking tell stories and make movies, and wouldn't that be great? I wish there was some way I could fuck it up. What if I started to make all my stories based on demographics and pleasing the sponsorship and trying to get a company to say yes? Why the fuck would you do that now? This has never happened in history ever. We've never been here before. Why fuck it up with all the bullshit that's been fucking filmmakers for, you know, the indie thing? Just go from 87 to now. It's been about put it all on a credit card, get it in a film festival, get a distributor to go. Now, all those art houses are gone. The money is not there. The festivals are fucking overwhelmed with projects. It doesn't work anymore. And it's great that Kevin Smith has a giant audience, he can find his way. It's great that Edward Burns has a giant audience, and he can find his way. The other thing is, do you ever want your own audience? How are you gonna get that? You know what you're gonna have to do? Start with one fan. And then you're only gonna have 50 fans, just like everybody else. And you're gonna have to work to build that up if you wanna be your own thing. But if you wanna be an employee for the factory that tells you what to do, that you have to fit in all these certain little things and do all this shit, then go do it. Enjoy yourself. Put on your fucking suit. Hold up your business degree. I just want to tell stories. If that's what you want to do, here's all the freedom in the world. Figure it out. Stop acting like everyone else. Because you know what? Everyone else is doing the same thing. They're all trying to figure out what girls say about what shit this says, and what. It's such a waste of time. Like, you can finally get around all the bullshit. Why would you make the bullshit part of the process? It doesn't need to be. And that's what bugs the crap out of the web series world. It's just too many people want a picture on a red carpet with a step and repeat banner behind them. Too many people want another award, another award, another. Who gives a fuck about all that stuff? Yeah, it helps with marketing. So does talking to your audience every day about your story. Guess what they want to hear about? They want to hear you talk about your story. That's more interesting to them. Not all of them. Not everybody cares. Some people just want to go watch something, go away. I don't care who made it. I don't care who those people are. It's a great story. Don't. Other people, who made this? Where did this come from? And to have those people, that's really cool. To have somebody in England go, I've been going through a really hard time in my life, and I found your show, and it made me laugh, and it made me forget about my kid who's sick, and it made me forget about being unemployed. I'll take that over every award. Fuck awards. Fuck a reviewer saying, good job. You know, to have someone say, who is not part of an industry, your story affected me. I'll take that.
Let's talk about how you develop the material then. You come up with it from your own inspiration, not who you're going to target to, how many women between this age are going to watch it.
Right.
So,
even though it is a vampire show. But it was, you know, Vampire Mafia, it's just too... I mean, the Mafia thing is always a fun world. Bad guys are just fun, and it's a fun world. And I base some of it on the state of organized crime in Boston in the late 80s after the FBI had done a sweep of the Patriarcha family through wiretaps. There was a big battle for turf, essentially, like who owned what. And so the off-screen logic to Vampire Mob was that was the world. That was the state of this world. And so as I cooked it, actually, the first place Vampire Mob was a short play that was performed at the Russell Group Theater in Santa Monica. They have a thing they've been doing for 9 years called the LA Cafe Plays, where the third Sunday of every month, 5 writers meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. They throw 10 envelopes on the floor, and we pick them up and pull them out, and there's 2 headshots with no resume. That's our cast, and we're given a theme, and we have 4 hours to write a play. We're done at 1, start printing, it goes to the cast and director and assistant director. They rehearse it until 7:30, that's the first performance, and then they do another show at 9. So I've written about 26 or 7 of those plays, and Vampire Mob was the first one. And it was one of those things that, like if you take a screenwriting class, they will tell you, like some teachers will say, well, let's take your characters grocery shopping, just to see what they do, see how they interact with the world. And the only time you do that is when you're in class, because no one's going to do that. Well, let me waste some time doing that. But writing that play really let me know a bunch of stuff about the character, and even at that point, Don had a different name. He was a mafia guy. He wasn't a hitman yet. There was some inference, but it was about his character meeting the person to become a vampire, and it was something I never wanted to shoot. I wanted to, the kind of classic screenwriting thing, come in as late as possible, leave as early as possible in a scene. I wanted to come in right before the shit hit the fan, and I didn't want all that set up. So by minute 3 of the first episode, we already have what the conflict is. We already know a bunch of things. So the way I write, and right now I'm writing 3rd season, and I have piles of legal pads, and I just jam. No rules. Anything that comes into my head about any character, any line, any scene, and I just start writing these little things down. And when I wrote the 2nd season, I went to the 1st season legal pad stuff that I had written, and there was one little, spoiler alert, there's one little thing that I had that Don, the main character who was a hitman, had killed another character's father, and she didn't know it. And that was always something that was in the biography of the case. Only I knew that, nobody else knew that, but it was in those notes. And in looking through essentially the character bios, I mean, I don't get that, I write kind of like who they are, what are they about, what do they want, that kind of thing. But once I know enough about the characters, then I can go, well, here's what this character wants, and here's what this character wants in this world. What's to stop each of these characters from getting what they want? And that's when plot and all the other stuff, for me, comes about. So it's really, like if you're a painter, maybe you sketch, and you kind of figure stuff out first, and then you start hitting the canvas. For me, the legal pads are just play, pure play. It's a playground. Write anything you want. I write stuff I won't end up using. I write stuff that I do. I'll write out whole scenes. Sometimes I'll just bullet stuff. And then once I have it cooking, I sort of have my rules for web series. I try to have 3 locations per episode. I try to end with some kind of conflict, which is pretty classic episodic writing, that what happens next episode? Like, you want to end at a point that will make you think, well, I want to watch the next episode. What the hell happened next? That's what I want. And I always write each episode as an individual file. I never write the whole script. I write episode 1 as one file, I write episode 2, and they never come together until I have them all written. Part of that is a complete psychology trick, because I'm not writing a long script, I'm just writing these little things. I'm shooting these little things. And then when you put them all together, wow, that's a lot of shit. And the 1st season was a 33-page script, the 2nd season was an 82-page script when they were put all together. And I write very sparse, lots of white, and I will, in post-production, I'll cut stuff out. I've cut lines out, I've rearranged stuff. I now understand much more about getting rewritten, having written and shot stuff, but those are kind of structurally my rules. So then what I'll do is I'll have episode 1, I'll have a 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 kind of main story points of each episode. Like, I try to have, like, you know, Don finds out that Frank gets out of jail in this episode. His wife has this reaction to this. And then once I have a bare bones and I know where it's going, then I'll sit down and actually write the script. So I kind of like do a free-form jam on a legal pad, kind of cook the characters, cook the story, come up with some ideas, and then give a little structure to each episode. So a very loose outline, like 1 sentence, and then that gives me enough play, because I don't want to have everything so planned out nothing can happen when I'm writing. And then I'll sit down and actually write the dialogue and write the scenes, and because I know where I'm going. I know that I need to end by this, so it makes me recognize, you know, I can't write a 5-page scene because I don't have that kind of time. With season 3, so far the episodes are going to be a lot longer.
Do you write at home? Do you find yourself getting too distracted there? Do you go
No.
to a coffee shop? Do you?
No, I'm not a, I tried to be a coffee shop writer. I always need to write on a laptop. Some of that is pure psychological. It's like, oh, it's just a little laptop. There's just something about like desk. Seems like, let me do a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yes, just something about it doesn't seem, it just seems closer to kind of like handwriting and, but a laptop anywhere, in bed, on the couch. If I'm in a public, when I write cafe plays, I'm in we all meet at a cafe to write it at the, back on Broadway in Santa Monica. I have headphones on, and I always listen to music that I know really well, and I always listen to Fats Waller. I listen to a lot of Fats Waller when I write, because it occupies the part of my brain that can think of something to do other than writing. I find that it's just like that part of my brain that's like, maybe we should go for a walk. Maybe, what about another cup of coffee? Instead, it's just like, that's occupied and I'm just writing, and it creates this little fantasy world. And that's the way I look at writing. Is like, I don't believe in writer's block. It doesn't exist. It's bullshit. It's just some ideas take a little longer. But to have this kind of, I'm just playing. This is all play. Like, it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, why am I doing it? I'm writing. Oh, who wants to do that? I'm not getting paid. This is going to take everything out of me when I shoot this. I'm playing. I'm right. This is going to be so much fun for these actors. That's the other thing to keep in mind, is like, I keep the actors in mind when I'm writing. Like, because I pay money to SAG for some reason. I don't act anymore, but I have acted. It's so much fun to be handed something and go, oh, this is going to be so much fun to do. Because when I'm writing it, it's the same thing. Oh, this is going to be so much fun to do. So those are sort of my loose. Even if I'm writing a feature, it's the same process. It's just a different structure, but it's got to be fun.
Can you talk about your casting process? How are you approaching actors? Are you reaching out to people's managers or agents?
I love to cast. I love to write the script knowing who the actors are. With the 21 actors we had for season 2, I think we had 12 of them cast while I was writing. The way I approach actors who are out of my league, like Marcia Wallace, Emmy winner on the Bob Newhart show, on The Simpsons. I acted with her in kind of a pilot presentation thing a long time ago. And we had mutual friends who were how I ended up there. And when I was writing the mother-in-law part, it's another screenwriting trick that if you cast, even if you're never going to get these people, if you cast your roles, even though you're writing a spec feature, but you cast them with the actors who you imagine playing these roles, it, at least for me, and I think for a lot of other writers, to hear that voice makes the dialogue better, makes the writing better, and because you already, it's not just words, because the classic screenwriting exercise is to remove all the character names, and you should be able to tell whose character that is just by the dialogue. And I think part of making that process is casting. But with Marcia Wallace, in the back of my mind when I was writing season 1 was, maybe I could get Marcia Wallace. And then after it was done, I'm like, I guess I should go ask Marcia Wallace. And working on another web series, a Super Deluxe series called Power Loafing that was written by Mike Upchurch, who's an Emmy Award winner, wrote on the Chris Rock show. He had Neil Patrick Harris come in as a guest spot, and the way they pitched it to Neil was, we need you for 4 hours. And we had him in and out in exactly 4 hours. No, plenty of breathing room, meal time, no rush, but 4 hours. And so when I got in touch with Marcia, I said, look, I've written this thing, I've kind of written it with you in mind. Would you take a look at this? So she looked at the script and she said, I usually don't do this kind of stuff, but I love this part, this is really funny. And I said, I only need you for 4 hours, because she thinks I'm lying, because every filmmaker is going to go over. everybody goes over, everybody goes long. Nobody makes their day when they talk about 4 hours. So when she came in, we got her in and out in 4 hours. Chris Mulkey on Boardwalk Empire, then on Twin Peaks. Chris, I only need you for 4 hours. Got him in and out in 4 hours. Kirsten Banks Neff, same thing. So once you've done it a few times, then when you approach people for season 2, and I said to Marcia, I'm going to need you for 8 hours. She believes me. She already knows how we do things. We didn't have a casting director ever. We did talk to a couple of casting directors for one part because we chased a big fish for a long time that we didn't get. A great thing to do is go see, it sounds ridiculous, but go see theater in LA. There's a million theater companies, there's a million black boxes, because you can find actors and watching them work. Like, I cast some people, I told them, you have a part. I just want you to come in and read for 2 parts. I'm not saying you are not, I'm saying you are in this project. I just don't know which one you're gonna be. I did that with some roles, but almost everybody, I'd never had auditions for any of the parts. Almost everyone was cast out of people I'd seen on stage at the Ruskin Group Theater. John Colella, who's the lead and co-producer on the show, he had been directed by Ray Allen in Italian American, Reconciliation, and in Cyrano. So he approached her, and she had already seen the show at the premiere, which we had at the Ruskin. So she saw season 1, and she knew kind of what we were up to. So it was a lot easier to get a Tony-winning award actor who's been on The Sopranos and a million other things. So I think that's one thing, if you want to get a name actor and can find some other way other than through an agent or a manager, that helps. But also, if just casting in general, see some plays, try to see plays with maybe larger casts. Definitely the cafe plays, if you're in Los Angeles at the Rust Group Theater, you can see, 10 actors that are doing completely different things in one night. I think that's a big thing. And then pre-production, like I said, I try to write to a location you know. So, like John Colella and Reamy Hall are married in real life, and their real kitchen in the show is their real kitchen in real life. That was easy. Boom, done. Their dog, Shiloh, is the dog in the show. So that was easy, because bring the dog and we're going to shoot with the dog. A friend of mine lives in a castle in the hills, and I had already written the scene with Chris Mulkey, and we worked on a project together, and she was like, would you like to shoot in my house? And I was like, she's like, I live in a castle. And I'm like, what do you mean you live in a castle? And we go, and it looks like a castle, and there's like a 25-foot stone tunnel like completely around, and so Chris Mulkey, he was selling blood out of a castle. Somebody else said, hey, if you need any cars, I have a bunch of cars. And I'm like, what kind of cars do you have? I'm like, I have a Bentley, a Maserati, a couple of Jaguars, a Ferrari. And I'm like, I'll take the Bentley, and just drop that into the scene. A really good thing to watch is, if you haven't seen Christopher Nolan's slightly short feature called Following, the audio commentary on that is like a film school, because that was, he said, the main character's apartment was that actor's apartment. He would shoot up from a rooftop of the actors on the street with them laved, because you don't need a permit if you're up on the roof shooting down to them on the street. So once you start thinking like that, I think it helps with pre-production, I think it helps with writing. When I'm writing, I'm like, how am I going to shoot this? Like, I just wrote a scene, there were only 2 locations I didn't have, which we got while we were in production. Always a little dangerous, but there's one thing that I've written now that I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to shoot that. So I'm not even done with the script, and pre-production is essentially already started, because I already know there's one location I don't have. All the other locations I have so far, and other ones I can see where they're going to be, but try to think of all your friends, where they live, their yards, their garages, their gyms, there's a restaurant, what are those restaurants' hours, all that kind of stuff, if you can, as early in the writing process as you can start pre-production for that kind of stuff, it will make your life so much easier. Because if I wrote, it's in a castle, now I have to go find a castle. If I just write, I don't really know where this is, and somebody says, hey, do you want to write in a castle? Exterior, castle, boom, we're in a castle now. So I think that's a big part of it. And the other thing for pre-production, the way I approach shooting is, I hate the mockumentary thing, which is what we are to some extent. It was a way to introduce the story and break it, but it's also an approach to shooting. I shoot 3 cameras running at all times, as much as I can, because it's coverage, it's fast, I can get my reverses, I can pick up stuff that if I was just doing single, flip it single, it makes continuity so much easier, and it makes shooting a lot easier, because if I can light 360 and I've got 2 or 3 cameras running, then I don't need to do a setup for this reverse and setup for this. It speeds up the whole process. But to try to shoot something that is visually appealing, like watch stuff that you like, even if you don't like the movie or the TV show and you like what it looks like, look at it, really look at it. What is this frame? Where are they cutting? Just to kind of get that stuff in your head. For me, because I don't do the proper director of photography, we just kind of drop cameras and I go, how about this and this? You got this, this and this, go. Because we don't have time. And real basic lighting, and try not to write like, we shot an action thing, and Jan Bryant and Dan Speaker, fight choreographers, came in and helped us kill a couple of guys without killing a couple of guys. But I wrote it so I knew I could shoot it without any help. Like, I try not to write something that is so far out of my ability that I have no idea how to shoot it unless I absolutely have to. Because that's another part of pre-production. If you can just keep stuff, I know where this location is, I know we can get this actor I've already have in my head, all those things as you're cooking it, it all sort of becomes one process, and pre-production can be less of the script is done, now let me go find every one of these locations, now let me cast every one of these parts. If I already have people in my head and locations in my head that I think are attainable or know are attainable, they will make all pre-production and everything so much easier, I think.
What's your plan for getting to the post-production process? The editing, the importing the footage, deciding on how to categorize things once you get into Final Cut Pro? What is it?
Post-production, I am of the philosophy that if you can learn to do as many things in this whole process, so I had never shot with a 5D before season 2, so I learned about the camera, and then I had to learn about the post, because we shot the first season on a VX2100 and a 2000, so it was standard definition old school video where you're plugging the camera in and zipping and capturing little chunks of video, which took forever. But with this process where we're shooting 3 camera almost all the time, so then that has to get transcoded, then all that sound has to be synced using, I use Pluralize, I cut on Final Cut Draft 7, Cut Pro 7, wrong Final Cut, and I do all the cutting, I do all the sound, I do all the color, nobody else touches. I leave with the cards, and no one sees anything until it's on YouTube. So it's, what I think that you save in time, like I don't know an editor who would work for the money that we had, which was nothing, to cut 82 pages with this much work. Some people like the idea of a director and the editor being separate. I think that because I cut it and I'm directing it and we don't have a DP 99% of the time, that when we shot a dinner scene for 6 and I can tell one operator get this, another operator can you get that, I'm going to get this, then I, in my head, am sitting in front of Final Cut Pro going, okay, so I have this, I have this, I have this, so I can go, okay, go. as opposed to, I don't know what the editor's going to want, let's cover the shit out of this thing. It's such a waste of time. So if I know what shot I need to get this, I know what I have to pick up because I know how to cut. So if I know how to edit, then it's one less job. I think it makes me a faster director. It makes me a better director. It makes me a better director of photography when I'm playing that game. And it makes it easier for me to explain to the people I'm working with who are shooting what I need. And also I can just sit there in my head and go, okay, so okay, good, go. With the fight scene that we had, I had a page and a half of inserts because I needed to kill people and have guns and crossbows and arrows, and we had no live fire, nothing with blanks. We didn't do any of that. So I look through the script and I go, okay, I'm going to need that, write that down. I'm going to need that, write that, write that. And then you end up with a shot list. And then it's going through and making sure, do I have everything I need? And that makes the post-production, do I have room tone? You know, I monitor what the boom operator's doing, so I have headphones on while I'm operating a camera, and I can hear if the mic is off and need if something picked up. Sometimes I'll grab some wild sound of a door creaking or something else that maybe I think I can use, because I also mix all the sound. And I do the color correction. So all of that makes a lot more work. And I would say if you're gonna cut your own stuff, it's gonna, I don't know how much time it's gonna take because I don't know how fast you are. But if you can learn how to operate a camera and you can learn how to edit and you can direct, you can be so much cheaper. You can be so much faster. And even if you know a little bit about it and you are working with another editor, you can at least say, look, you know, if we go from this shot to this insert to this, that's what I'm thinking. And if you never cut before, or you don't know kind of what that brain, it's like you focus your brain on how that works. Once you have all that stuff in your head, the more you know, essentially, the more you know about the whole process, the better you're going to be. And I think it's worth it, you know, to learn how to edit if you're a director. I think it's worth it to learn how to operate a camera if you're an editor, because even if you are, I've never been a video village tent guy who's looking at a monitor going, like, I want to be right there with the actor with the camera. I want to be right in the middle of it. I want to see, like, I know when the shot goes. I get made fun of because I always say, cut, very nice. And everybody's like, oh, Joseph, very nice. Because that's my gut reaction. Like, I saw it go through. I'm like, very nice. That's it. We got it. Next. Moving on. Or let's do another take that I want this. It's hard. It takes a lot of time. And again, it goes back to make a story you love. Because when it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you're sick to fucking death of looking at these shots and you can't figure out, how am I going to get from this to this? I love this story, I'll figure it out. As opposed to, oh boy, they're going to buy Volvos because of this. That's a hard thing to keep motivated about, I think. But yeah, learn to cut, no matter what. Learn to cut.
In terms of marketing and promotion, how do you interact with your, quote, audience?
I think that's as important as anything at this point. I think if you're a director like me, you're an indie director, you don't have a big resume, nobody knows who the hell you are, to get on Twitter, to start talking to people, talking about your story, talking about the making of your story, is part of your job. If you want to be one of those people that's just like, well, I make films and then people watch them and then I'm going to go make more films, you're just making a mistake and you're kind of a dick. Because if you're not talking to your audience at this point in history, you're losing out, A, on a gigantic opportunity. Like, didn't you want to tell stories to people? Who the fuck do you think those people are? They're your audience. They're on Twitter. They'll say hi. You can say hi to them. That's important. And also keep in mind, Kevin Smith has this giant audience and Edward Burns has their giant audience that they've been building for pushing 20 years, 15 years. They started somewhere. So Vampire Mob has 4,000 something followers. We started with 0. I talk to people all over the world every single day. It's part of the job, it's part of what I do, and I also really like talking to people all over the world. It's really interesting to you know, say goodnight, good morning when the time zones are whatever they are. To hear what somebody in South Africa thinks of your show, or Australia, or Romania, the UK, Germany, Italy. I've had audience members help translate the show into French. The whole first season is in French and German because people volunteered to translate it. People helped me do closed captioning. The thing with doing stuff online now, if you're not on Twitter and Facebook, I think it's part of the job, and I think that if you're talking to your, I say audience member more than fans because it changes the dynamic, because they just watch the show. They're not fans, they just watch the show and they like what you do. Hearing what they like, why they like it, hearing their responses. Now that I'm writing other seasons, hearing who they'd like to see more of. I'm not saying that they tell me what to do and I go do it, but hearing, like, they wanted to see more of Shyla, the dog, from the first season and the second season. So we had more of Shyla. That was something that was definitely for the audience. But to have people say, your show affected my life, or entertained me, or helped me get through a hard time, that's the only way you're going to hear that. And it's not that test group audience thing. It's you're a human being who tells stories. They're human beings who do whatever they do and enjoy your story. Why not talk? Why would you not talk to those people? I think it's a huge missed opportunity. And even if you're an indie person who's looking to go big time or whatever, having an audience doing whatever you're doing is always good. Why would that ever be bad? And yes, it takes time, but if you're not investing that time, then I don't know, then who watches your show? Because, you know, I only make the story part of the year. The rest of the time, I don't have anything to talk about. We're talking about the weather and coffee and the holidays and whatever comes up. But you begin to, like, I now, like, know names of people's kids and who has kids and that kind of thing. And it becomes part of your life and part of the process. And, you know, beyond just, I have a new show, look at it. You can only do that so much. You can only go, look at me, please retweet, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. No, shut up. You've been saying the same thing over and over and over again. Part of it's kind of like if you're an author and you do a book signing, it's like you're doing a book signing all the time, 7 days a week. You're always talking to people, you're always interacting with people, and building an audience from zero to, like I said, we're now at 4,000 followers. Whatever that translates into views or fundraising, and that's the other part of it. If you're not on Twitter and you want to fundraise something, you're not going to succeed unless you have some really famous person that's just going to spike the interest of that. It's just hard work, and I think most of it's done on Twitter, more so than Facebook.
I notice sometimes you send out email newsletter updates,
I do,
which is great. And do you find that people also respond to that as well, since it seems like more people are on Facebook and Twitter now?
I find more from Twitter than anything.
Really?
Yeah, more than Facebook and more than email. Yeah, the emails I don't do too often because it just feels spammy, but even looking at the report you get, the response to it is not that huge. I mean, it's just to kind of let people know when something big happens is the way or something little happens, or just keeping people up to date. But Twitter is really it's very, it's not even official as a blog. It's almost throwaway. It's almost like you type it and it goes away and it disappears into the chum of Twitter. But yeah, I think Twitter's the most important part, I think. At least now, that'll change. Remember MySpace and Friendster?
Right. Interesting. It'll be Quora.
Yeah, or Pinterest maybe a little bit, yeah.
So you were talking earlier about Google TV and where or where experts too envision in about 4 years. So
I think it's when you look at what's going on with Netflix and Hulu, where they're starting to make their own shows, and YouTube's dropping $150 million into YouTube, or Google into YouTube channels, all the same company. I think what is happening with the ability to stream things on your television, again with the behavior of, like, I watch a lot of TV on Hulu. Like, I rarely watch live television ever. I don't even watch my actual television that often anymore. That's a behavioral thing that changes. There's lots of internet connected TVs out there that are not connected to the internet. That's going to change. Now that you can stream with a PS3, with a PlayStation, with a Xbox, a TiVo, a Blu-ray player, now that Netflix has shows that you can only see on Netflix, and they're bringing Arrested Development back, and they're shooting David Fincher's House of Games or House of Cards. Hulu's has Battleground and a couple other shows. The behavioral reality of appointment television is dying. It's only really the American Idols and that sort of thing. Where this is all going is that there will be no more networks in the classic sense of the word in terms of your brain, because it's like the TiVo. Once you started doing TiVo, then it was like, well, you just put your own network together. Right now, it's just a tsunami of content that is just coming towards everyone, and more videos are getting uploaded. Now it's going to be about quality, it's going to be about what people like, but the reality of sitting down and watching a television show at a certain time is over. Even with Netflix, they put out Lilyhammer, which is a show they made with Norwegian television. They put all 8 episodes, they put the whole season up in one day, because more television is watched on Netflix right now than movies. So they already know this binge viewing, this idea of like sitting down with all of Sons of Anarchy or all of Mad Men and just watching episode after episode. That is a behavioral thing that's happening. So where this all ends up is, I think for an independent storyteller, if Hulu or Netflix puts a show on the internet and someone can stream it to their television, and you put a story on YouTube and they can stream it to their television, what is the difference between you and Netflix and Hulu? Nothing. It's just that they have money in marketing. That's all they have. I mean, that's a nice thing to have, but the reality is that's sort of like they're the Cineplex. You know, we're still the indie theater down the street that has the shitty popcorn, but we're both on the internet. We're both can stream to televisions. So right now, in terms of the future, there's no difference between me and what they're doing other than they're a giant machine with money and marketing and more production value. But the reality of all this is that I can now, like when you made a film, you'd have to go to a festival, get a distributor, get it to a theater. Now you can just put it on the internet, and more people see stuff on the internet and more movies on their television and streaming than not. So why wouldn't you do that? I think that's where the future is. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be archaic. It's going to be hard to figure out where stuff is. That's the next thing, and maybe Google TV will play a part in helping people find things. But everything's going to be on the internet. Independent stories, network stories. There will be no more cable. There's no need for cable. They're already building a cable station on YouTube that has more channels than any cable system that exists now. So that's already happening now. It's really just about the audience's behavior catching up to the technology's ability. It's already there. It's just the mindset of, I'm going to watch that on my computer, or I'm going to stream that to my television.
What would you see as the time frame that will be fully integrated into the internet?
I don't know. I don't know. It's not going to be probably this year or next year. I think it's more about, it probably took, say YouTube starts 05, 06, it took maybe 4 years to get people to start watching stuff on Hulu and Netflix, so maybe 3-4 years, something like that.